Good afternoon, audience in the room and those that are with us virtually. I hope your Dreamforce is off to a great start. I'm super excited to be with this panel today on an even more exciting topic of accelerating AI in sales, service, and marketing. I'll get the panel started by asking them to introduce themselves. And we want to keep it fun. This is Dreamforce. AI is the thing that's at the center of the conversation, and so I'll ask them to introduce themselves. And the first thing that comes to mind when they think of AI. Melody, do you want to get started?
Sure, absolutely. I'm Melody Ayeli. I'm the Senior Director of Enterprise Artificial Intelligence at Toyota Motor North America. I've been at Toyota for 6.5 years, and before that I spent time at Deloitte by chance. So when I think of AI, the first thing I think of is the tremendous opportunity for innovation, transformation, and acceleration. It has the power to transform virtually all industries, and it's starting to do so already. It has the ability to analyze data in a far faster and solve issues far faster than we've been able to do before, and I think in the future could potentially save lives. And also enhance the way we live in our daily lives in ways that we're only beginning to imagine. And I think right now, the opportunity for AI, especially generative AI, is to accelerate and augment our human employees. So I really think this is the beginning of an era of increased human productivity.
Well, I appreciate that. Bina, would you like to continue?
Hi everyone, my name is Bina Amanat. I lead our global Deloitte AI Institute. I also lead trustworthy AI and ethical tech globally for Deloitte. When I think of AI, I think of that human being in the remotest part of the world who now has access to education, to be able to travel virtually, to see museums across the globe, to interact with anybody in the world. Providing that level of access can tap into solutions that we probably haven't been able to tap into without AI.
And Shin?
Good afternoon. I'm Shin-Lee Chi. I'm a Senior Director at Toyota's Brand Engagement Technologies and Insights Group. I've been with Toyota 18 years. When I think about AI, first thing, Skynet, Terminators, throngs of them. I know there's many of you who's thinking of that. You want to raise your hand if you're thinking of that? Yeah. I think there's a ways forward before we get there. It's still a bit of ways. But on a more serious note, I think as our trust grows in the technology and as our data grows, the value of AI is going to increase, and I'll talk more about it, but I really see it as a benefit, a business value multiplier.
Well, appreciate you all for introducing yourself. Shin, you said something, business value multiplier. Business value is always important when we think about driving technology investments and initiatives. But I think in the environment we're in right now, it's more important than ever. I find that the burden for proof as we think about business value is higher than I've seen in recent years. And I'd love to understand, in the service center at Toyota, how are you thinking about business value and how you drive that and the impact on customer experience?
So at Toyota and Lexus, at our Brand Engagement Center, we want to treat all of our customers as guests in our home. To that end, we value the individual customer engagement and experience. So we even have an omni-channel strategy that will allow us to communicate to our customers on the channel that they want to be communicated with. Voice, chat, soon to be text, and social media. And with that, with today's technology with AI, across all those channels, AI is able to bring answers to our agents, but our agents have to package it together for that personalized experience. We at Toyota are betting on generative AI. That's going to give us the ability to hyper-personalize, to be able to take what we know about you, your vehicle, and what you want in your specific situation, and create that response to the customer. So that's going to change everything. I think about that as it's multiplied across each channel. Now, we have customers that are boomers. They don't want to talk to people, or they want to talk to people. They want to talk to people on everything. And then we have customers that are Zoomers that don't want to talk to anybody. The AI will play a role. AI will personalize that message and elevate that customer experience on every single engagement. And that's why I think it's a business value multiplier.
Shin, you said something there about AI and humans together. And so it's hard to talk about technology without thinking about adoption. And when I was reading, generative AI is being touted as the fastest adopted consumer technology ever. One, do you think this is going to happen in the enterprise? And how should companies think about adoption? And Melody and Bina, I'll ask both of you that question. Melody, maybe get started.
Sure, yeah. I'd say start with education. Help your employees understand how generative AI works and how it can benefit themselves and their teams and how to use it properly. Then I'd say, second, foster a culture of experimentation. Help teams explore how generative AI can enhance their workflows and help them with problem solving, and give them a safe space to pilot new projects and get hands-on experience. Third, I'd say prioritize data privacy and security. And make sure that your teams are building responsibly, and that could be through a set of principles and guidelines. And fourth, I'd say keep open lines of communication and provide transparency. It's critical for that to enhance and build trust across the enterprise.
To drive adoption in the enterprise world and see that same pace of acceleration, I think, like Melody said, there will need to be that base level AI fluency, not just amongst your employees, but at the highest level of leadership, from your board members to the C-suite, and then reevaluating new roles that might be needed, right? Whether you need to bring in a chief AI officer whose primary focus is about bringing AI to the enterprise and get the maximum value while mitigating the risk, right? So new roles, making sure you have the right kind of talent within the organization. And it doesn't mean that you need to reskill en masse, but how do you augment skill sets that can help them in their current job to be successful in the humans with machines scenario. So there's a number of different things that organizations can do to set up to be able to get the full benefit of generative AI. We are still in very early days, but there is so much potential with it.
I agree. How many folks made it to the keynote yesterday? So I was doing a little word game. I was counting how many times I heard a few words. And so of course data and AI were top of the list, but right there was the word trust. And I don't know if the audience knows this, but you wrote the book on trustworthy AI, like not metaphorically, literally.
Yeah.
What would you say to this audience as they think about trust?
Yeah.
And what they need to keep in mind, and what the best companies are thinking about as they embrace AI with trust?
Yeah, I think it's important to think about trust beyond the context of just headlines, what you're hearing in the news. Let's see what's on top today when you hear about ethics or trust. You hear the word hallucination. But take a step back. As technologists, what does hallucination really mean? That the software that you're using is not reliable. And we've been able to solve for reliability issues, right? So we need to be able to translate, the existing headlines to an enterprise level. So, and focus on how can you build trust, not only within your user group, but with your stakeholders, with your end users, but the surrounding ecosystems. Build the right alliances. Move beyond the headlines to think about the dimensions of trust, whether it is on bias and fairness, transparency, accountability, reliability. There are so many nuances, and the reality is, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It depends on the use case. For example, the other hot topic around this was on bias and fairness. But really, it does not apply unless human data comes into the picture, right? If you are predicting a machine failure, then you're probably not going to be as worried about bias. but in this room, I'm sure everybody interacts with customers and humans, so bias is going to be a big part of it. And then you have to think about, just the different dimensions and how are you going to measure for bias? The reality is every AI is going to have bias. That's part of the equation. So it's important when you start taking on a project to define those levels of bias. Let me give just one example from a very generic world, right? If you're using facial recognition in a law enforcement scenario, and it is biased, it's a terrible thing, right? It is, you just cannot use it. But that same exact technology can be used to identify kidnapping victims or human trafficking victims. Then the question to ask is it helping us rescue 60% more than we could? Could we rescue 40% more? What's the accepted level of bias? So when you bring it within your use case context, within your organizational context, you can now define the metrics, the accepted levels of bias, and move forward. So I think of trust as not a one-size-fits-all. It depends on the organization and the use case.
Yeah, and Beena, I obviously read your book and was thinking about it a lot coming into Dreamforce. And I think you scratched at a topic of the use case really, really matters.
Yeah.
And for all of us that have been thinking about what does it mean for sales? What does it mean for service, commerce, marketing? What does it mean? I saw statistics, 37%, only 37% of people actually trust the AI insight that's produced. Well, back to our adoption question, how am I going to get my sales user to use the insight? How am I going to get my customer to feel good about the insight that the service rep is generating? It opens a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And so for folks that haven't seen her book, I ask you to look out for it. It was a great read. So Dreamforce is about getting ideas, it's about innovating, but it's about action. We all leave here wanting to take things back to our daily lives that we can make actionable. And so with that, I want to pivot to advice to the executives, the teams in the room, about how companies get started. Right? We can talk about ideas, but how do we get started on our AI journey? And I'll ask each one of you. So Melody, I'll start with you. What's your advice to folks?
Well, I would say understand your business needs and make sure that your business objectives are clearly defined and align your AI development to those objectives. Because otherwise you may have teams that are building really cool things, but they're not going to affect the bottom line. Second, I would say invest in talent, as Beena said, and make sure you're providing education to your teams. AI is only as good as the people behind it. So it's important that you're able to help keep your teams educated and aware, and you have the right people to can keep up to date on how it's rapidly developing. And third, I would say make sure you have a responsible AI framework or something similar. As I mentioned, that it's only as good as the people behind it. It's also only as good as the ethics and the the diversity in the people that are developing it. So it's very important to have diverse teams, to have a set of principles that align with your company's values, and build responsibly.
Melody has given absolutely the starter pack. So, that's exactly how you get started. But here are some other things you can consider. Do not try to build it all yourself. Tap into your ecosystem. And this might be actually an area where you might want to even collaborate with your competitors, because the reality is, this space is so rapidly evolving. There is no well-defined playbook. Right? So you have to decide, what are the best practices, what are others doing with use cases. You might want to look at the broader ecosystem to get ideas for your own organization, whether it's best practices around risk and governance or the use case itself. Collaborating with your competitors, especially in the space now where there is so much talk around regulations, right? It is coming, but if we can collaborate as industry peers, there are best practices that we can come up with, and you don't have to completely rely on waiting for the regulations. You can self-regulate. So I think this is the era of tapping into your ecosystem partners, alliances, and that's going to help you get wherever you need to get faster.
So I took this journey started 3 months ago, and the moral of the story is you don't do it alone. Many of your organization like ours have almost planned a 100-year plan, 50-year plan, 20-year plan, but things like AI come and we don't have a plan and we don't have a process. And you have to bring all the right people in. We're not just talking about your business customers. We're talking about your data governance. We're talking about cybersecurity. You were talking about legal with specialty lawyers on this topic. We had to get everybody together, and a part of this, as they realized that a process has to be formed, a governance committee had to be done to help expedite programs to leverage this technology. The second part I would say is, don't do it by yourself. I know many of you are in the technology field. Oh yeah, we'll just have Bob install it and Susie will test it on Monday, we'll get it out. It doesn't work like that. Build that charter with your business customer. Have this curiosity mindset. Explore it together. Take the journey. Get the business case. Try it. See if it works. So there's no explanation and we learn together. And that's a path that we're taking, and we started this path with Deloitte and Salesforce, and we're having a proof of concept to try everything I've been talking about of how we can get that personalized experience. But don't do it alone, because there's many expertise and angles that you may not be thinking of that's important to your organization. And that trust, if you lose it, is very difficult to build back again, especially if your customer walks away with something that's not a good experience.
Thank you, Shin. Our time, I'm looking at the clock, our clock is, our time together is ending soon, but I was scribbling mentally a ton of notes, and I looked around and I saw many others were as well. When I think about it, I think one thing is clear. It's an extremely exciting time, whether you're in the business side, the technology side, whether you're a team delivering or you're an executive. And the things I took away were, you got to think about the talent. You have to think about trust. You have to get started. There's a bias for action. You can't start anywhere unless you know your use case and your business strategy and have a clear path to value. And the part that I hadn't fully been thinking about was that you can't go at it alone, even if that means working with your competitors, thinking beyond your usual partners. I think one thing is also clear is that it's a new realm out there, and our traditional ways of doing things are probably not going to help us be successful in how we tackle this new world. And so we're excited to keep the conversation going. Please drop by our Deloitte Digital booth. Look out for Bina's Trustworthy AI. And the other thing that I would mention, we're excited to launch what we're calling, I'm a big cook, I cook a lot at home, I sort of simplify everything to a cookbook. Deloitte is launching today our Gen AI guide for CRM. It has a chapter on sales, it has a chapter on service, marketing, and commerce. Download it at deloittedigital.com/Dreamforce. Thank you for spending time for us today. For those of you in the room, I'm jealous I don't have the cool headphones on like you all do, and those virtually, hope you enjoyed and got value out of our time together today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.